Today's video, I'm going to go into something that I have coached on many times over the last, 7-8 years, where I've really put some intensity to my business and personal development. I've developed a very powerful weekly routine, and I've put some elements into play that I have forced myself to do week over week, quarter over quarter. And today I'm going to walk you through those things that have allowed me to operate at my best as often as I can.
Here we go now.
All right, before I jump into some of the specific elements, all of the power around a morning routine and a weekly routine set up for success starts much before that given week. So what I find is when people are out there trying to achieve and target a set of goals, they'll often, unfortunately, go day by day. You'll wake up, you had a good sleep, and then you start going. And you think within that time period, you've got the wherewithal to pull together a well-crafted, a well-intentioned, a well-focused plan. And then you'll be able to achieve it that day. And then the next day you'll wake up, do it again, and do it again. But what I'm here to say is I've seen this trap being fallen into too many times, and it's why I've forced myself into an intense routine that allows me to seamlessly and almost effortlessly look like I'm pulling off more than my industry competitors. See, as much as we are entrepreneurs and as realtors, we're independent contractors, we've got into this business because we love the freedom. That is fantastic. But you have to transition your mindset to go away from I am free to do as I wish, build what I want as I want it, to transition it to some version of an intentional plan. To me, I've done a lot of business planning over the years. For those people that have never done one, just the act of getting it from your head down to paper and planning out some series of events you want to achieve for a year, that's going to set you up far beyond just the people that are just attempting to do it all from their head. But what I've found is I've transitioned it from an annual business plan over to a 90-day cycle, or I would even say a 12-week cycle. Now, I certainly have the big goals. I have the 1-year goal, I have the 2-year, the 3, the 5. I even have some big, long 10-year goals. But what I've found is building my daily practice, putting in the intentional effort around a goal that's too far away, started to create this system where I was building assumptions over assumptions over assumptions. And I realized that was probably not the best way to go about it. So I seeked out a couple different ways to go about an appropriate business plan with intention that I could get behind. To me, those big pillars into the future, the 1-year and the 2-year, they act as a bit of a guiding light and a bit of a filter. That's the important part of those. But what you do notice as you're going through your day-to-day, right, as you're trying to build that powerful weekly routine, so much of the whirlwind of the day comes at us, and that derails us. And I think of it kind of like those who have gone down a mogul run at a ski hill. What happens is if you pointed your skis straight, you wouldn't do so well because the intensity of the bump after bump would send you flying. So what do you have to do? Well, you're constantly moving your skis left, right, left, right, left, right. But you can't do that for very long. You're constantly readjusting so that you can get down to the end of the field. And I find that's what our job is like when we're out there as entrepreneurs. You need the guiding light. You need the thing to adjust to, but you got to realize most of the time you're slightly off course. That's the day by day. And you need a process to be able to bring you back in alignment consistently and constantly, or before you know it, you'd be off the side of the hill into the trees. So to me, the 90-day cycle or even the 12-week cycle provides that layer of tangibility that we all need and crave. Because when you look out about 3 months, you can physically see what you're going to need to likely do to get from week 1, 2, 3, all the way to 12 to hit that 12-week new goal. When you can see it, you can believe it. When you can see it, you can likely get some confidence behind it rather than some distant goal that is hard to really plan around because there's so many levels you haven't hit yet. If you ever wanted a great book to explore this concept deeper, it's simply called The 12-Week Year, and a great friend of mine, Paige, and a fellow realtor in British Columbia, Canada, provided me this almost in perfect alignment as my own personal planning was transitioning to this anyways. As I was looking for something to support this, I needed something that I could write, and I needed something that I could work with day to day. And I found a journal called the Self Journal. The 12-week journal provides me the boundaries and the parameters to which I can set up this very tangible 1 to 12-week plan. We've talked about the big goal. We've talked about the 12-week cycle now that I work through. But the next thing I want to talk about is inside that planning. What sets me up again for this incredibly powerful week after week? The first part of the planning that goes involved in that 12-week cycle is defining a results goal. This is where you would typically say, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a salesperson, you'd set a sales target, maybe an annual income goal. If this is a health goal, you would be setting something such as, I'm going to lose 40 pounds. It's the big goal. It's the result you're trying to achieve. That's the step 1. See, quality of life to me is a lot different than the word balance. Balance, I've found, and you might have read, is very difficult to achieve. It's almost like we're in a constant state of being out of balance, where the pendulum swings from one end to the other. That is the life we have chosen. To think that you will be in balance most of the time, I believe, is a falsehood. By taking steadfast control of my world, it's allowed my clients to receive a better me. It's allowed my agents to receive better products, services from my company. It's allowed my relationships to get stronger with people because I'm prepared and I'm ready and I feel like I'm running my day rather than it running me. After you define your results goal, whatever that might be for you, the big, Jeff, my partner out in Ontario, speaks about the lighthouse. Once you've defined that, the next layer is project milestones. You've got things below that goal that you want to achieve, and it's time to define them and to start to quantify some things. So if your goal is to increase revenue by X, then the project milestones would be defined a little tighter than that. In our property management company, increase revenue by X might mean retain more clients. It might mean keep vacancy rates lower, and it might be growing doors. So those 3 layers allow me to then create a separate mini plan around each of those initiatives. Okay, once you've defined those 3 project milestones that you're going to try to target, you need to develop a series of action steps, right? The actions and the tasks that you're going to take on to achieve each of those milestones, all relating to that big goal. So that's where I go from 3 now up to 5. I really try to keep it simple, but for every attack that I want to have, for every milestone I want to hit, I can define some clear, tangible, recordable, trackable metrics. And when you get down to this point, if you don't have something you can track and measure, it's hard to quantify the wins, the losses, and the successes you're having. Now remember, we've defined a 12-week year now, right? A 12-week cycle. Every day matters in that cycle. A little different when you plan around an annual, where you kind of can shrug off a few days, weeks, and you think you can catch up, right? I've built some urgency into my business so that every day matters. So if you're an agent, maybe the goal is to sell 24 houses this year. Okay, if that's the goal, fantastic. One of your milestones might be buyers, listings, and one might be transitioning to online leads. Okay, so if you dive into one of those, you will want to create 5 action steps, up to 5, that you would perform day in, day out. If it is getting listings, well, it could be, door knock X homes per week in community Y. It could be phone 5 of my past clients. It could be network at 1 event per week. It could be host 2 open houses per month. Whatever that might be, you're defining something very quantifiable. And the same would go for something like a health goal, a fitness goal, a reduction in body fat, an improvement in weight loss, whatever that might be. You continue to run this process. When you've gone through these steps, you can probably see how defined my go forward weeks look like. Because I've taken that time to slow down, I've set up myself to win week after week. So on a week by week basis, this is where I go. On Sundays, I have a hard blocked time in my calendar. My kids know it, even my 4-year-old knows it, my wife knows it, and I think every agent at my brokerage knows it now, including my leadership, where I have a fixed amount of time. It's going to take what it's going to take to ensure my entire week coming forward is defined. I really aim for no white space on my calendar. The first thing I do with this is I go back to my prior week. And that's step 1. A lot of people forget about this. Think about this for 1 second. If I'm this disciplined week after week, the first step I should do is go back to see all of the energy I put into building the calendar from last week. And there will be things that didn't get done. My goal first and foremost is to determine, okay, was I right in having that as one of my most important things right now in my business? If it is, and I didn't get it done, I will find a place to carry it over and plug it into this week with urgency. But sometimes you see you put something in there and it didn't get done because it wasn't that important. And you realize now after going through a week or maybe a second week's carryover that item shouldn't have been there. And it's a great opportunity now to strike it off the record, maybe put it in a wait and see pile for later. But that's step 1 in my weekly planning, which generally does start to fill up a few things. Of course, right then and there, I'm doing anything personal. All my health and fitness going into the calendar. All of my family requirements for the week, all in my calendar first. So I can cater to myself, maintain full control over my big goals, including health and family, before I start to slice in all of the business related elements. Now this next phase, when I start to fill in the next gaps, I go back to my big results goals for the quarter and I re-look at it. Right? How many of you made a plan for a year and never really looked onto it again? Well, I ensure that I look at this constantly. So as I'm planning on Sunday, I will review those 3 big results goals, and I will determine what are the most important elements to attack on those 3 things and ensure I place them into forced time blocks. I know for myself, the best and most important times of my day is between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. Throughout my career, I have learned that even as busy as I get, even with clients, which in a real estate business, people say this often, I need to get back to my clients. I've found that it's very, very rare that somebody will really need you dire straits between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. So I hard block those times to my most important items required for my results goals. Now, when I go in time block, I used to do 2-hour time blocks, and I found that they were great sometimes, but the ability to stay that focused for that long is hard to achieve day in, day out. I've actually now reduced my time blocks to 50 minutes, 50. And what I do is 50 minutes, I know, I even set a clock beside me on my computer. And then after the 50 minutes, I make sure I get up out of my chair and I start to take on some practices to try to reinvigorate myself. It could be a few push-ups. It could be some squats on the spot. It might be some jumping jacks. It might be just going outside barefoot and touching my feet on the ground and looking off into the sun. Included in that is often a practice of breath work, some simple either box breathing or even 4-7-8 breathing. I add this in to give myself these mini breaks so I can come back and then recharge for the next time block hour. One thing I try to avoid at all costs is placing any meetings prior to 11. I do have one standing one that comes every 2 weeks right now in my calendar. I have to admit, I haven't been able to push that one off. But because I believe so much can be done with well-constructed emails, with proper if-then statements done, so that when you ask a question, you also provide an if-then statement to anything that you may be asking and questions they may have. It really reduces the back and forth, and I challenge my leadership team, I challenge my agents, and I challenge my staff. I'm even challenging my 12-year-old to speak in this way to create efficiency within our days. So I don't meet for the sake of meetings. I really push back against that. Another little hack I determined after being incredibly religious towards my calendar is I realized that oftentimes we underestimate or we don't even plan in the travel components to the meetings we go and have. And that really stressed and crunched my days. I get anxiety if I'm going to be late or if I'm just walking right into an appointment. To me, I like to be early, and I've had to time block, and it might sound simple, but give yourself that extra 15 minutes on the bookends of these travel appointments to ensure you're not in a state of stress. High stress leads to inflammation, high stress leads to anxiety, and you're not going to perform at your best. That's not how you rock out a professional rock star week. The other little thing I do is I book in a mini midweek, almost vacation. It's a think time. A lot of us call it CEO time, and that's a 1 to 3 hour time block where I shut everything off, right? No phones, no internet, no nothing, and it's just me thinking upon the business. This allows me, again, that midweek to go through everything that's kind of come up. Maybe I have to reconfigure a few things, or maybe it's just a great moment to pause for the first time all week and think about the business from a leadership capacity. Okay, another little thing that I've added, I call it the daily wrap up. This is an element at the end of my workday as I transition from work mode over to family mode. I'll take 15 to 20 minutes and it's blocked into my calendar where I focus to pull everything in that came in from the day and ensure it's my catch-all moment. I'll often do this in the driveway before I get out of the car and walk into the house to be able to spend time with my family. In this moment, as we know throughout the day, it never really goes as planned. The goal with the wrap up is to catch everything that might be written down in my notes, might be saved, maybe as a screenshot on my phone, to quickly double check my inbox, and to pull everything that's come in at random and organize it in a fashion, usually into my CRM, right? Into my CRM so the names are captured, the follow-up sequences that I need to kind of put into practice are deployed, and oftentimes you're needing to make some adjustments to your calendar. Because if we go back to our Sunday night planning, we know that it wasn't always going to go as planned. My goal with the wrap-up is to make sure it, for one, gets tracked and inputted somewhere. When I go back to look, it doesn't fall through the cracks. But then again, I do want to transition to make sure if I need to get this into the time block in the days to come, that there's room for it. And then I make some strategic decisions to what needs to change and evolve based on that original Sunday night plan. Now, on a given daily basis, there's two practices that I try to implement in my life every day. Doesn't happen every day. I'd be lying if it is the case, but I do try. The morning is a journal session, and then also in the evening, another journal session. The morning session goes something like this. At the beginning of the day, I'll go into the journal and I will force myself to do a couple things. I will rewrite those big 3 goals, those big lighthouse items that I'm trying to achieve, so that it becomes front and center in my mind as I enter the day, which means I will enter the activities that I'm looking to accomplish filtered through that lens of the big goal. On top of that, I write out my most important tasks for the day, the most important intentions, the things that I want to achieve that are tangible. And the funny thing about this is that's right below the main 3 goals. If it looks like one of these tasks that I've set myself up for in the day doesn't line up with one of those goals, it becomes very apparent. And it's a great almost check and balance in my own little accountability to say, whoa, what am I doing this for? And if I need to make a course correction, that's a moment on the fly that I can do just that. The second thing I like to do as well is I use like an Outlook program for my calendar. What I do is I will look at that and I will translate it into the journal, into pen and paper. And I will make physical notes beside those time blocks throughout the day for the commitments that I have. Because the calendar is one thing, it tells me what I'm going to do. I'll never miss it when it's in there. But in the journal, it allows me to kind of go through it in my mind so that I'm almost practicing it in the very beginning of the day. I've almost visualized what the day will look like and my intentions for each one. Those note-taking sections beside the actual element of the calendar are very beneficial. And the very last thing is going through some gratefuls in the morning. I try to go for 3 and set the tone for the day. There's something that you're grateful for, and I slow down as often as I can to jot those 3 things down so that I can give myself like a mindset that is a winning style attitude right at the beginning of the morning. At the end of the day, this is what I go through. In the self journal, there's a section called the lessons learned. This has become one of my favorite items because, again, on the fly, as a check and balance for my business, my personal attack plan on life, trying to build this quality of life, these lesson learned sections allow me to quickly kind of rewind through the day and realize some things that if I didn't slow down enough, you might kind of gloss right over. Oftentimes during that session, when I quickly go through the lessons learned, I'll determine that some of my maybe time blocking initiatives didn't work. Maybe I find that I keep putting off 1 or 2 things. Maybe it's because it's not that important. Maybe it's because I need further learning. Maybe it's because maybe it wasn't supposed to be there and it was just a good idea. But oftentimes there's just some little changes that I need to make to allow it to be more successful, such as, hey, that never works in the afternoon because by then I'm already brain fried. And that lessons learned allows me to quickly hack my days and adjust as I go. I always like, again, to end the day like I do with the beginnings. I go through my wins for the day and I find the mini moments, even though you might feel like there was none. And then I also go through gratefuls at the end of the day and jot those down so that I can put my head on the pillow and I can feel good about what I accomplished, even though it may not be everything that you'd hoped for. All right, well, there you have it, everybody. That's everything. That's how I build towards my personal weekly routine that has power, that has intention. As I unpacked it, there's a lot of layers to this, and I understand that. If you'd like to learn more, if this is a concept that's important to you, I'd love for you to make a comment and share with me maybe even your best practices and how you've gone about creating a week after week powerful routine that allows you to accomplish the things that I know you want to. So thanks again for watching. If you've watched this far, please subscribe if you haven't yet. And of course, if you want to make sure you receive all of these new videos that I drop week after week, hit that notification bell. And I look forward to chatting with you next time.